Hello everyone, I'm Justin, and this is a full recap of Loki Season 1, released in 2021. If you end up enjoying this video and want to see more from us, then make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to know anytime we upload a new video. When Tom Hiddleston's Loki was first introduced all the way back in 2011 as the main antagonist in Thor, I doubt any of us could have predicted that the character would be in the spot he is now, playing a huge part in showcasing the multiverse and the way it works in the MCU, as well as being the first character to introduce us to the MCU's next big villain, Kang the Conqueror. But thanks to his continued rise in popularity over the years, Loki has now become an integral part of the current story Marvel is trying to tell as their Multiverse Saga continues on. So, with it now having been over 2 years since his titular series debuted, and with the new season releasing in about a week, we've decided to take a look back at everything that went down in Loki's first season. Before we begin our recap though, make sure, if you haven't already, to go watch all 6 episodes of Loki released up to this point, so you can enjoy them for yourself without any spoilers. But if you have seen them and are just looking for a quick refresher, then you've come to the right place. The series opens in 2012 New York, following the Avengers' victory against the god of mischief, Loki Laufeyson, after he'd attempted to take over Earth. But unlike in our main Marvel universe, in which Loki was then sent back to his home planet Asgard and subsequently sentenced to life in prison for his crimes against humanity, in this universe we see here, Loki actually manages to escape before any of that can happen. During the events of Avengers Endgame released in 2019, the Avengers, following their defeat to the Mad Titan Thanos in 2018, managed 5 years later in 2023 to figure out a way for them to travel back in time to universes parallel to their own. And so, thanks to this new discovery, they were then able to collect the 6 immensely powerful Infinity Stones that Thanos had used against them previously, and ultimately defeat him. The Avengers time heist did have a slight hiccup though, during their first attempt to collect the Tesseract containing the Space Stone, which they had planned on taking from their past selves following the Battle of New York in 2012, as just moments after Tony Stark, aka Iron Man's 2023 variant, managed to sneakily gain possession of it, it was unexpectedly knocked out of his hands by a frustrated Hulk suddenly bursting through the wall, which then resulted in the Tesseract landing at Loki's feet, who quickly picked it up and used it to escape through a portal that ends up transporting him to the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. There, he's soon met by a few agents entering through a portal of their own, who claim to have come on behalf of the Time Variance Authority, and are here to arrest him for his crimes against the sacred timeline. And once having arrested him, they then take him back to their headquarters along with the Tesseract, which Hunter B-15 places into evidence. As Loki's left to await his trial, he's also shown a video starring Miss Minutes, which explains that long ago there was a vast multiversal war that nearly resulted in the total destruction of everything, until the all-knowing timekeepers emerged and reorganized the multiverse into one sacred timeline. But sometimes variants veer off the path the timekeepers created for them, creating a nexus event, which left unchecked could potentially lead to another multiversal war. So to prevent that, the timekeepers created the TVA and its workers to set time back on its predetermined path, which leaves the variants that veered off said path without a place on the timeline, so they must stand trial for their offenses. And Loki's then taken before Judge Ravona Renslayer to do just that, but he pleads not guilty and claims the Avengers are the actual time criminals, since it was their actions that allowed him to escape. But it turns out, as revealed by Renslayer, that the Avengers time heist was supposed to happen, and it was his escape that created the Nexus event. So he attempts to escape once again with the use of his powers, but they're revealed not to work in the TVA, and he's sentenced to be reset. That is until Renslayer is approached by another TVA agent, Mobius M. Mobius, who's been searching for a dangerous variant that's been attacking and killing hunters as they attend to Nexus events and stealing their reset charges. And he believes Loki may have some knowledge that could help find them, so he convinces her to allow them to speak in private in hopes of learning why Loki does what he does. But Loki refuses to believe anything about this place. So Mobius begins showing him events from his past, including multiple moments from his recent invasion of Earth, as well as another memory from all the way back in 1971, revealing him to have been the man behind the D.B. Cooper alias in the real-life Northwest Orient Airlines plane hijacking, in which the man had managed to sneak a bomb onto the plane and demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes in exchange for the flight's 36 passengers, which he ultimately received, before then ordering the plane to set course for Mexico City and jumping out of the aircraft in the middle of the flight. And Loki claims this whole ordeal was the result of him having lost a bet to Thor. Mobius then also begins displaying events from Loki's intended future, such as his imprisonment on Asgard we mentioned earlier, and the more haunting revelation that he was inadvertently responsible for his mother Frigga's death, who, in our main Marvel universe, we saw killed during an invasion of Asgard's royal palace by the Asgardians' mortal enemies, the Dark Elves, who, upon their arrival, Loki had actually attempted to point in the direction of Thor, but he instead accidentally led them straight to their mother. Before they can continue though, Mobius is called away, as the dangerous variants killed another unit. So he goes to wrap things up, only to find Loki has escaped, as he's gone to track down the Tesseract, threatening an employee named Casey into turning it over to him. But when he finds it, it's placed alongside multiple other Infinity Stones, which appear powerless here. So he returns to Mobius's office and views the remainder of his set path, including his father Odin Borson's death, which takes place about 4 years after Frigga's, his reconciliation with his brother shortly after, and ultimately, his irreversible death at the hands of Thanos. And all this makes him realize that he has no other options, so he agrees to help Mobius and gives him some insight on why he does such horrible things, claiming that, although he doesn't enjoy it, he's had to kill people in order to inspire fear and reach his perceived destiny. He still doesn't understand how this helps with their current situation though, until Mobius reveals that the dangerous variant is actually another variant of Loki. So, hoping his unique Loki perspective will lead them to this other Loki, Mobius has him take a look through each of the variants' case files. And through this, Loki realizes that they must be hiding in apocalypses, as their presence there wouldn't form a branch on the sacred timeline, since the location will be destroyed anyway. So they begin searching through case files for all naturally occurring disasters that go down without warning and leave no survivors. And they eventually decide on traveling to the 2050 apocalyptic event in Haven Hills, Alabama, along with a unit of hunters once again led by Hunter B-15. Once there, Loki and Mobius are split up, with Mobius searching throughout the supermarket with the other hunters, while Loki searches for the variant with B-15. And as they search, Mobius finds the previously captured Hunter C-20, who appears traumatized and reveals that she gave up the Timekeeper's disclosed location to the variant. Meanwhile, Loki soon encounters said variant, who communicates with him through various civilians within the store, including Hunter B-15, by enchanting and transferring their consciousness into them, which our Loki is unable to do. In their discussion, Loki attempts to recruit them to overtake the Timekeepers together, but the variant doesn't want to rule the TVA, and instead plans on destroying it, which they begin their attempt at after revealing themselves to be a female Loki variant who chooses to go by Sylvie, and exiting through a portal to the TVA's headquarters, as the reset charges she'd stolen earlier are sent through their own portals throughout the store to bomb the sacred timeline. She's continued to be pursued by Loki though, as he's still hoping they could partner up, distracting her and allowing a unit of hunters and Renslayer to surround them. So they're forced to retreat through another portal and unintentionally send themselves to an apocalyptic event that Sylvie describes as the worst of them, on the moon Lamentis 1 in 2077. And they're unable to leave yet, as the tempad used to create the portals is low on battery. Loki quickly gains possession of the device though, and uses his illusions to hide it, forcing her to work alongside him for now, so they make their way to the evacuation vessel, the Ark, which they believe would have enough power to charge it, and get on board with the use of their combined magical abilities. Once on board, they begin growing more of a liking towards one another, as they discuss some of the negative and positive parts of their lives growing up, as well as their equal struggles with finding love. But they're soon interrupted by the ship's guards, who realize they aren't actually permitted to be there, resulting in a brawl that ends with Loki being launched out the window. So Sylvie dives after him in the tempad, which gets completely destroyed as he tumbles to the ground, forcing them to devise a new plan in which they'll have to hijack the Ark and make sure it actually makes it off the moon. As they make their way back to it, Loki asks to know how her enchantment powers work, and she explains that, upon making physical contact, she's able to grab hold of their mind. Although some minds are stronger than others, so for those, she has to create a fantasy from their memories, which is what she's revealed to have done to C-20, using a memory from her time on Earth before she was even working for the TVA. And this revelation shocks Loki, as he was under the impression that the Timekeepers created all their workers. Still, they continued forward towards the Ark as the moon and another planet continue to collide, but by the time they reach it, all they're able to witness is its destruction. With their death imminent, Sylvie reveals what led her to want to destroy the TVA, explaining how a unit of hunters, which was actually led by Renslayer, took her when she was just a child and held her prisoner, until she managed to gain possession of a tempad and escape, but was still forced to grow up at the ends of 1,000 worlds. So Loki comforts her, praising how she was nearly able to take down what's likely the most powerful force in the universe, and letting her know that she's amazing. Their demise continues to grow nearer though, so the two lock eyes and hands, accepting their fate. But just then, two portals appear beside them from the TVA, as for some reason their actions have created a branch on the timeline. So they're both taken back to and separately imprisoned at their headquarters, with Loki being questioned by Mobius about the branch he and Sylvie had created. Loki doesn't actually know what caused it, but Mobius soon figures it out, as after lying about Sylvie being pruned and seeing the sadness the news brought to Loki's eyes, he realizes that it was the result of two variants of the same being sharing romantic feelings for one another. Loki quickly shifts off that topic though, to reveal that the Timekeepers are lying to them, and that all of the TVA's workers are variants. But Mobius refuses to believe any more of his lies, and leaves Loki imprisoned in a time loop of a moment from his past following a prank he'd played on Lady Sif, an Asgardian warrior and close friend of Thor, that resulted in her kneeing him in the nuts. He's left thinking about what Loki said for a bit though, especially since earlier he was informed by Ravona that C20 had died due to Sylvie's enchantment of her. So he goes to speak with her again to learn more about what happened, but she constantly deflects the question, forcing him to steal her tempad while she isn't looking, through which he learns that C20's mind didn't crumble as Ravona claimed, but rather she was killed to prevent anyone else from learning the truth. So Mobius rushes back to find Loki, to whom he reveals was right all along, and prepares to work together to save Sylvie, as he believes that the connection between them could be able to take the TVA down. Before they can though, they're met by Ravona and a unit of hunters, who she orders to prune Mobius before escorting Loki out of his cell. They then go to escort Sylvie out of hers as well, but when they enter, they find her soaking wet, as earlier she was met in her cell by Hunter B-15. Who then took her back to the 2050 apocalyptic event to learn what the memories she was shown while enchanted earlier were, and has it proven to her that she, as well as everyone else, are indeed variants. So Ravona has an alert put out for her, while Loki and Sylvie are taken before the Timekeepers to be pruned. But just then B-15 arrives and shuts down the necklaces trapping them, before the three engage in a battle against Ravona and the Hunters, each of whom are promptly killed, while Ravona is incapacitated. And with no one left to guard them, Sylvie begins her attack on the Timekeepers, first decapitating one of them before the other two seemingly shut down, as it's revealed that they aren't actually living beings, but just mindless androids. And before they can try to figure out what to do next, Loki's suddenly pruned by a recovered Renslayer, although she fails in her attempt to prune Sylvie as well. So, to avoid being killed, she reveals that Loki isn't yet dead, but was rather transported to the void at the end of time, and offers to help her find him, as well as whoever actually made the TVA. But just when she appears to be trustworthy, she has her guards called in by Miss Minutes, so Sylvie steals her tempad and prunes herself to enter the void, where we see Loki has met up with multiple other variants of himself, who've helped him avoid the Void's guardian, the transtemporal entity Alioth. One of the Lokis, later labeled Kid Loki, is actually the chosen ruler of the Void, with his Nexus event having been him killing Thor, while another of them, dubbed Classic Loki, had everything go as intended all his life, until he managed to trick Thanos and fake his own death with an incredible illusion. He wasn't immediately caught by the TVA though, as he decided to stay away from his loved ones upon realizing that all he brought was pain and suffering. So he lived for years on a remote planet in isolation, until he eventually started to miss his brother, but as he prepared to reunite with him, the TVA arrived. They believe there's no hope for their redemption, since even when they try to change for the better, the TVA sends them here. But Loki convinces them that could change if they help him take down Alioth, as well as the TVA, and they agree. They're soon aided in their quest as well by Sylvie and Mobius, who'd met up earlier upon awakening in the Void, and Sylvie proposes she enchant Alioth, believing it must be guarding whoever's behind all of this. So Classic and Kid Loki bring them to it before heading back into hiding, while Mobius uses the tempad to return to the TVA, and Loki and Sylvie approach Alioth as it branches out towards them. Once close enough, Loki begins distracting the entity, while Sylvie attempts to enchant it, but it soon realizes what they're doing and turns its attention to her, until it's shifted towards a greater distraction, that being a huge illusion of Asgard conjured by Classic Loki, who seems to have finally found his glorious purpose as he sacrifices himself to allow Sylvie, together with Loki, to enchant the entity and make it to the Citadel at the end of time. Meanwhile, back at the TVA, Renslayer's called for Miss Minutes to download all the files on the founding of the TVA, as she does actually want to find the real person behind it, but she's instead given files that Miss Minutes claims He Who Remains deemed more useful. Upon receiving these files though, she's met by a returning Mobius, so she tries to call in a hunter, but they're currently occupied preoccupied with Hunter B-15, who was imprisoned after their brawl earlier, before now being released by Mobius, and traveling to Fremont, Ohio in 2018, where she reveals the truth to the Hunters by introducing them to Ravona's variant self. Mobius doesn't want to prune her though, and actually believes that together they could rebuild the TVA while still protecting people's free will. But she believes the only person that can have free will is the one in charge, so she exits through a portal to search for it herself. Back to Loki and Sylvie now though, as inside the Citadel they finally meet He Who Remains, a variant of scientist Nathaniel Richards, who explains that eons ago, a variant of himself lived on Earth in the 31st century, and became the first to come in contact with alternate universes and his own variants. But although there was peace at first, eventually some of his variants looked to conquer other universes, resulting in a multiversal war. And from all the tears in reality came Eliath, which he managed to weaponize to put an end to the war, before then creating the TVA as well as the Sacred Timeline, to prevent any branches in reality that would result in his variants rising again.
If you think I'm evil, just wait till you meet my variants.
It turns out, though, that for a long time he's been looking for someone to take his place, having grown tired and older, so he proposes that they take over, as he believes out of every scenario he's seen play out that they're the best choice. Before they can give him an answer though, he goes silent for a moment, before revealing that, although he claimed to know everything to ever happen, from this moment forward, he actually doesn't know what'll happen next. Sylvie doesn't buy it though, and goes to kill him, but she's stopped in her attempt by Loki, who does believe him, and thinks they should consider taking his place if it means staving off something worse, which results in a short battle between the two, as she believes he's just seeking another throne. But Loki manages to pause her attack, as he explains that all he really cares about is making sure she's okay, leading the two to share a kiss, before she then shoves him through a portal back to the TVA, and ultimately stabs He Who Remains through the heart, who claims he'll be seeing her soon as new branches begin to form in the timeline behind him. Meanwhile, back at the TVA, Loki rushes to the library in search of Mobius, but when he finds him, Mobius has no idea who he is, and we see that this is actually the TVA of another reality, as in place of the Timekeeper's statues is a statue of Kang the Conqueror. And that was our recap of Loki Season 1. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful in any way, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to see more content like this, just click the second link in the description for our Marvel playlist. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.